I knew everything because I flew 100 times a year. So when I looked out the window, because I was in seat 15A, I was 4 rows behind the left wing, I saw fire coming out from beneath the left window. Planes lose engines. I mean, it happens more than you think it happens. The guy next to me was getting really quiet because no one knew what was going on, and I said, we're going back to the airport. And I felt his banking, but that no one knew at that point what happened on the left side where I was also happened on the right side simultaneously.
Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
All right, well, we're here with Dave Sanderson. I don't know if you go with David or Dave, but Dave Sanderson. Welcome to the show. We're so grateful to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. You can call me David if you want to, but only when my mom's around, okay?
Okay, just like my mom was the only one to call me Bobby.
Yep. That's right. Yep.
Until I was 5 years old and told her, Mom, Robert is on my birth certificate, so you got to call me Robert.
So, whatever mom says is right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, a lot to get into today in this time, and of course, everybody wants to know, and we certainly want to know, about that moment in time, January 15, 2009. But also want to know, because obviously, you were a busy executive before the plane crash, and we kind of got a sense that you were the typical high-achieving, high-performer type guy, just, great work ethic. And I'm sure it was all in about your career, your business, and I'm not sure what was going on in the personal life, but what were things like before the plane crash? And then,
well, thank you, Robert and Kayla. I really appreciate it. Yes, you're accurate. I was hard driving. I was, I had goals that I was going to achieve those goals, and as I look back on that time, one thing is I sort of thought through is I was actually living back then the life my dad lived. My dad was a sales executive back in the 60s and 70s. He was gone 3 to 4 days a week. His model of the world, because he grew up during the Depression, was dads earn the income, moms stay home, raise the kids, and you work hard and make sure your family's taken care of. So, it's intuitively, that was the mindset that I had. And I did. I was traveling 3 or 4 days a week. We were earning a lot of money, putting money away for kids. And, I wasn't there for the kids a lot. And I wasn't there for my wife a lot. Because my model of the world was, I'm taking care of my family this way. Right. And then all of a sudden, January 15, 2009 comes, and then life changes dramatically at that point in time.
Yeah, so tell us, I was doing a little research. I didn't realize, because I remember when we talked last time, I didn't realize how fast everything happened. And so just looking on Wikipedia and all that, look at the timeline, and from takeoff to landing in the water was like 5 minutes.
Are you serious? It was that short?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, talk to that, like when did you know something was going wrong? I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of time. So when did you know something was going wrong, and what's going through your head at that point?
You're right. I think the technical was like 5 minutes and 50 some seconds, right? That's basically from takeoff to crash landing. Yeah, I mean, nothing unusual about the takeoff, right? I mean, yeah, we were delayed and it was snowing. It was 11 degrees, but that's New York.
That's LaGuardia Airport.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until about a minute after we took off is when I heard an explosion. And it was a loud explosion. I wasn't paying attention. I knew everything because I flew 100 times a year. So when I looked out the window, because I was in seat 15A, I was 4 rows behind the left wing, I saw fire coming out from beneath the left window. So I knew something had happened, but I flew so often, I thought plane lost an engine. Planes lose engines. I mean, it happens more than you think it happens.
So it's happened to you before? Then?
It's not happened to me before, but I know that planes lose engines because I've talked to people, right? But you also know, as if you fly a lot, that planes have multiple engines.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
This plane had 2 engines, right? Left and right. So no big deal. We're going back to the airport. And, and the guy next to me was getting really quiet because no one knew what was going on. And I said, we're going back to the airport. And I felt his banking. But that no one knew at that point what happened on the left side where I was also happened on the right side simultaneously. Mm-hmm. The double bird strike happened at the exact same second. So the boom that everybody heard, all right, we got another engine, right? No one was panicking. As we were banking, I looked out the window and I saw Manhattan, and when Manhattan was like right here. It's like, I've never seen that. I've never been that close to Manhattan, the skyline. Okay. Then you look out a little further, and all of a sudden you see this bridge coming up. Like, okay, I haven't seen the bridge, right? and all of a sudden, you hear the captain say his famous words, "This is your captain, brace for impact." And this is the moment you know something's going on, because they will not make an announcement like that unless something is radically going wrong on the plane. And then as we were crossing over the George Washington Bridge, and I looked out the window, we cleared the bridge by roughly 400 feet. So you could actually see the people's faces looking up at you.
Wow.
And that's the moment I knew that this is serious.
Wow.
And this is something's going to go happen, and I don't know what's going to I don't know what's going on, because all you could see was water.
Yeah.
And at that point, I knew we were somewhere around Manhattan. I knew we were sort of because I've been there a lot. I travel a lot. I didn't know what part of Manhattan we were, though, whether we were in the Hudson or we were close to the bay. So, that's the moment I realized that, man, this is serious. And about 60 seconds later, it was when we crashed into the river. It was a hard hit. He estimates he hit between 100 and 120 miles an hour.
Oh, wow.
That's how hard the plane hit in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's that like, and what's going on? I mean, I imagine there's just a lot of pandemonium. It's just crazy. Everybody trying to get out. No
one lost their heads. I tell people, I
Really?
think that's God's grace coming into play, because no one lost their heads.
Wow.
And now if you look at it, if I take this now to a business sort of mindset, take this like a business case. The reason why, and I actually talked to a couple people about this, and a captain from U.S. Airways gave me this insight, which I never thought about till he gave me the insight. Because if you look at what happened on that day, if you go, and then we were actually in Orlando when he was telling me the story. And have you ever flown out of Orlando? Have you ever flown out of Orlando?
Yeah.
It's usually what? Families, kids, right? Vacation.
Yeah.
With very few business people. Have you ever flown out of New York?
Yeah.
Totally opposite,
Right.
right? So about 90% plus on the plane were business people. Very few vacationers. So business people usually go into business mode, right? Okay,
Yeah.
I got to handle it, right? So I think that was a major contributor to people not losing their heads, because people went into business mode and went into I got to handle it. I got to handle myself. I think that's why people didn't lose it.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have thought the opposite.
Well,
But,
and I'm also thinking too, there's not, like you said, not a lot of families, so people aren't like scurrying around trying to get their kids. And,
No. There was one family with 2 kids and a couple older people. That's it.
yeah. Plus, because it's the winter time, so it wasn't tourist season anyway for Manhattan. So I think that's
Not mid-January, no. No.
Wow. So people were going out orderly, but he also sounds like you stayed behind a little bit, make sure people were getting out, and so you're one of the last passengers to leave, and you were in the middle of this plane. So what was going through your head?
Well, that wasn't my game plan. My game plan, I'm a business guy. I'm also an athlete, and going into sports and athletics, one thing I was always taught, you have a game plan. You have a game plan. I mean, so the game plan, once all this started transpiring and we were going down, my game plan was aisle up out. And in my head, I just kept saying aisle up out, aisle up out, aisle up out, because if I survived, number one, now I've got to get out of the plane. Because there's 2 things that can happen. It can go into fire, right? It can explode, or you're going down, right, in the bottom of the Hudson, right?
Yeah.
So my game plan was aisle up out. I didn't think about anything else. So when it was my time, when I got to the aisle, my game plan is I'm going out the door. I went out, and I was right in front of 10F, right? I was going to go out. But all of a sudden, my mom kicked into my head. And my mom passed away in 1997. But there was something she would tell me when I was a child that popped into my head at that moment, and it was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a small town outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, where everybody knew everybody and everybody took care of everybody. So instead of going out, I climbed over the seats to go towards the back to see if anybody needed help. Now, I get to the back, things were moving pretty well. Because now you got to move, right? Because the back of the plane, the pictures you see from the front, you don't want to see it. If you see the picture from the side of the plane is actually underwater in the back.
Yeah.
So water was like chest level deep.
Oh my gosh, that deep! Wow.
That deep. So people were moving. So I got behind the last person. I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm I'm like trying to get out. Water's up here. Luggage is floating in the water because, when it hit, the luggage, the bins broke open, right? So luggage is all over the place.
Oh, wow.
So I'm making my way out, and the first light that I saw was on the right at 10F. I knew where 10F was, right? So, okay, I got there, like, I'm out of here, right? Gotta go. And then I got to the door, and I looked out, and it was an amazing sight. There was no room on the wing of the boat for me. It was already filled up.
Oh, wow.
So, but there were
You mean not even like a little foot or a little like half foot to get your tippy toes on there?
You couldn't even get out on the wing. You couldn't even get out on the wing.
Oh.
And if you see the picture of people standing on the wing, all right, before the boats got there, you look at that picture, you'll see what I'm saying, right? It was jammed. So that's why I was inside the plane, waist deep in 36-degree water for about 7 minutes, waiting till I had that opportunity to get out. And candidly, what forced me to get out was when I felt the plane shift. And it was about 6 or 7 minutes into this. And what happened, I found out later what happened, one of the boats of the rescue, it was a tugboat, as he was backing out, he hit the front of the plane. When he hit the plane, it shook the plane. Shook the plane, water's going up my backside. I'm like, man, this is Titanic, right?
Oh, wow.
This thing's going down, and the last thing you want to be is stuck inside something like that, and it's at the bottom of the Hudson.
Yeah, you don't want to get sucked down in with it.
Just like Titanic, right? Those people got sucked down in that boat, died. People got away from the boat on Titanic, survived. So that's the moment I jumped in and swam. I gotta get away from the plane, and I swam to the closest boat that I could find. It was into the wing, and that was the longest 15-yard swim of my life. Wow. Because not only was the water at 36 degrees, I was already fully clothed likewise, and I was already soaking wet, but there was also jet fuel in the water now because of the crash. And that's why I'm wearing glasses today. Because when I got to the hospital and they tried to clean my eyes out, I still had a little haze. And I got back here in Charlotte and went to the optometrist. They found black spots all through my eyes. And they think jet fuel got stuck in my eyes.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. So, but I got there. And now you got another, you're there, great. Now you got another problem. How are you going to get out of the water?
You're exhausted, you're cold, you're just spent.
And they're telling you to climb a ladder onto the ferry. And I yelled up, I can't. And then my mom started talking to me again. Because the word my mom hated most of life was the word can't. Well, see, when I was a kid, and you said I can't to my mom would look you in the eye and said, if you can't do it, you're going to do it. And I realized after my mother passed away, the worldview of my mother was, if you can't, you must. She would never accept that word. So I got my one arm up, the other arm up, and somebody actually pulled me on the ferry. And that's how I survived the plane crash.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, and I like that quote, if you can't, you must. So I'm just writing that down here.
Yep,
oh my gosh,
my
it's
mother,
interesting how your mom came to you 2 times.
My mother passed away, and I tell people what I really believe, and whether you believe there's a greater being or not, I do. I think my mom was at the left hand of God at that moment. I think she was sitting there watching this, say, okay, this is your test. This is your test, right?
She was your guardian angel.
She was the guardian angel.
Dave.
Wow. She was giving me, that was the test of everything you learn, right? That's why my first book's called Moments Matter. Because all the moments that you learn in your life, it's that one critical defining moment that everybody has in their life. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Are you going to use those moments, right? Are you going to use
times, it would have been so easy just to give up. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I can't do it. I'm exhausted. You can come up with all these reasons and thoughts in your mind where you're just want to give into it.
That's right. And, there was a lady in the back. She was the older lady. She's like 80-some years old, wanted to give up. And there was a lady in the back that just basically kept pushing her. It was like, no, let's go. And just kept pulling her, right? Because you're right. Some people just want to give up, say, you know what? I can't do it. Well, that's not one of the mindset my mother had. My mother, I was instilled with you get anything you want if you have that mindset, right? And fortunately, I had a mother and a father that really instilled that when I was young. So that saved my life that day. But I really believe my mom was sitting there watching this and just guiding me.
Yeah. Wow, and even just what you're talking about, about that 85-year-old woman. I mean, it's such a metaphor of life too. Sometimes you just need those people to push.
When you don't want to go. I mean, she didn't want to
right.
go. She couldn't do, but God bless that woman for just pushing the 80-year-old. You're going to do it. You're going to do it,
kept
and
pushing
just
her.
kept pushing her, and eventually she got her out. So I mean,
Yep, she got
there you
out.
go for support and encouragement, people to come alongside of you and just spur you
I
along.
mean, this
And
lessons, business lessons, teamwork. There's so many lessons in this, right? Teamwork and leadership and mindset and resourcefulness. I mean, this is what I talk about because this is really a case study on how to handle your mind when all stuff hits you, and you don't think it's going to hit you. Because one thing about a plane crash, I tell people, when I've been in a lot of hurricanes on the East Coast, we got hurricanes. But a hurricane, it's coming.
Yeah, right.
Right. Plane crash,
Yeah.
you don't know what's coming.
Yeah, surprise.
And you got to start handling stuff quickly, right? You got to start handling, and it starts right here because the only thing you can control in a plane crash is your mind.
Yeah.
Everything else is out of your control.
And plus, in this one, it happened so quick. I mean, from takeoff to
1 minute
to landing.
1 minute.
Yep. Yeah, and so just you have to really make a lot of decisions really quick. And so I don't know if it's helpful or hurtful, but so was there any moment in time you thought you were gonna die, or just you're just concentrating on what you need to do?
There were two moments, and I tell people, I survived the plane crash, but the first moment I thought that I was dead. I was sitting in the triage center in Weehawken, New Jersey. They had a triage center for people like me who've been in the water, right? And they basically took all my clothes off, and I'm down to my underwear. I don't know what's going on. And a guy came up to me. He had a card in his hand. He said, "Sir, I need your name and you need your date of birth." And I got it out, and he writes it on the card, and he puts it on my right ankle, and he walks away.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
And the only thing I can relate to that is I tell people, I don't know when you all grew up. I grew up in the 70s, a TV show called MASH. They take
the toe tags.
That's exactly what I thought. I was on the floor. I was naked. I was ice cold. I could barely breathe, and I had a tag on my foot.
Oh, geez.
I didn't make it. I tell people, first thing I thought was the movie Ghost. Because if you remember the movie Ghost, you just watch yourself die.
Yeah. Right.
I said, it's true. I said, it's true. I'm dead.
Oh,
I'm just watching this thing play out, man. Until Heather, my EMT, comes back and says, I got to take your blood pressure. And I said, good. Mine was 190 over 120, which was not good.
Yeah.
And that's what she goes, you got to go stat. And when I tell people, when you hear the word stat on TV, you're going someplace, right? Things happen when they say stat.
Yeah.
And that's when all of a sudden things start picking up in my life because all of a sudden things start moving. So to answer your question from the beginning, there's a lot of things that I learned afterward. Like number one, I need to spend more time with my family. Mm-hmm. Number one. That was a big learning for me. Second biggest learning is to be less judgmental. And I saw something that happened that woke me up about that, where people were judging this guy like I was. I was judging this guy who was a passenger on the plane until I found out that he was going through a divorce and he lost his job. And all of a sudden, he associated the plane crash to devastation. So he was lashing out to all of us, right? And I said, if I judged him way too quick because I didn't know his backstory. And that was the biggest business learning that I had is if I stopped judging people right now, just understand their backstory before I make a judgment, how could that change my life? And it changed my life 180 degrees. Everything.
So I think I missed something. So you're saying one of the passengers was acting out or being obnoxious?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a little later on, right? We were all together. All the passengers were together. He lashed out.
Okay.
Started yelling at all of us.
Gotcha.
And myself and other people, I'm sure, but my side, I was like, what's wrong with this guy?
Right, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then I found out he was going through a divorce and he just lost his job. So he associated the plane crash to devastation.
Yeah, sure.
It devastated his life. See, what I associated it was a blessing to me because it opened up things. Yeah. But then I started saying, how many times have I judged somebody that quickly?
Yeah.
How many? I mean, I've done it thousands of times.
Yeah.
Right? And also I judge somebody and all of a sudden, what does that do? Stops a relationship, stops a conversation, stops money, stops a job. It stops a lot of things. I said, if I can just work on this one thing, and this is what I've been working on. I've worked on it since that day. Be less judgmental.
Yeah.
And so I know that person's backstory.
Yeah.
And once I understand their backstory, now I can understand how to respond.
Yeah.
But that's changed everything. That helped me. That gave me the opportunity to be and speak at the Supreme Court with the American Red Cross. I mean, things like that would never happen in my life. Just by one learning right there. I tell people, if there's one thing that comes out of COVID, just be less judgmental. That's it.
Yeah.
Be less judgmental and watch what happens to your life. Watch what happens.
So after the crash, how did it change your relationship with your family or your wife, or did it?
It did. It did. It changed. Everyone had a different experience, but I'll tell you the one that changed the most was my 16-year-old daughter. And because she's the one who got the message that I was in a plane crash and had to tell my family. Now, I tell people, I don't know if you've ever had a 16-year-old daughter. You know, yours, if you have one, they'll probably love you all the time and they love to do everything they tell you to do. Ours didn't. She hated us. You know, she despised everything we told her. She fought back on every point. It was a battle, right? Everything was a battle until this moment. Because what happened was she had the message, so she had to tell the family. But the next day when I got back, this is when everything changed for her, she and I. And I got back, and she and one of my daughters escorted me because, I mean, there were media every place. I was doing interviews all over the place, right, at the airport. And I got interviewed by People magazine. And when People did the article, they showed a picture of she, myself, and one of my daughters. And all of a sudden, she realized Dad's pretty cool. Right?
Got street cred now.
Street cred. And she had street cred, and I had street cred.
Exactly.
Right? And I mean, all of a sudden, that's when our relationship changed. She's like, you know what? And I think that was probably one of the best experiences out of this, because all of a sudden, because, you know, she was going to college in a year and a half or so, right? She didn't like us. It was a battle. From that point on, we still had our moments, right? You still got your moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was like a calm having your moment, right? Yeah. You can have a discussion. So, yeah, but each one of them, I mean, my wife, I guess we talked about my wife. She won't talk about this. Her experience that night was something that spouses, I think, usually have when there's other spouse has something going on, right? And I'll give you a brief example of what happened to her. So she was actually taking our son to basketball practice while this was going on. While all this stuff was going on, you know, things are breaking loose, right? She finds out. My daughter calls her. She has a meltdown, right? She melts down. Fortunately, our minister was there because he was doing basketball practice at church. Fortunately, our minister sort of calmed her down and said, I'll take care of him. You go do what you got to do. So our daughter was playing high school basketball. So she went by the high school to pick her up. She was a freshman, so I had to pick her up. And then all of a sudden, she gets home, and what happens is this. She had ABC, CBS, and NBC cameras all around the house before she even got there.
Oh, no.
And hitting her immediately. She knew nothing. She didn't even know if I was still alive.
Oh, wow.
All she knew is I was in a plane crash. That's all she knew.
Oh, wow.
So that hit her immediately. And the second thing that happened is the company that I was working for didn't even call her. Didn't check in. Didn't say, hey, how you doing? Can we help you? Nothing.
Oh.
To this day, almost 15 years later, no one's ever talked to her from my company.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, really?
So that they didn't call me either, right? They didn't even check in on me. I had to go by the office and let them know that I was alive.
Oh, jeez.
So that was my moment. I made a decision. I have to get out. Because all I was a number to my company. I was always a number, right? Wow. So her story, and she tells it much better, right? And my kids tell it much better than she does because they were there with her, right? Yeah. So I tell people, you got to watch after the spouses. The spouses are getting as affected as the person in the middle of the game.
Yeah. No, that's wow.
Yeah, because she's at home, not knowing, trying to pick up all the pieces and figure out what's going on, and
no food, 4 kids, freaking out. Here's your dad on TV with Katie Couric, right? All with stuff up his nose and things going in his arm, right?
She's probably having to watch the news just to find out how you're doing because she has no idea what's going on or who to call. Who do you call?
They were flipping channels and they found me on CBS with Katie Couric. That's how they found out.
Our show. So tell us about professionally, how have things changed? I mean, you definitely perspective on life and family obviously has changed, and now professionally, because you talked a little bit about before the crash. Now, now post post crash, how has your professional outlook changed?
Well, it took me a little while to exit out, Kaylee. It took me a couple years to figure this thing out, right? Because I was still making a lot of money. I was the top sales guy that year, right? So I made a lot of money, and my wife likes benefits. So I mean, so it took me about 2.5 years to exit out. But what happened was this, and I'll tell you how it transitioned what I'm doing. So it was actually Thanksgiving of 2012, I think, 2012. And I was closing another big sale. And I was at where I'm sitting right now, exactly where I'm sitting. I'm working on Thanksgiving because our quarter ended, 2 days later. I had to get it done. So I was out here working while they're having Thanksgiving dinner, and I needed help, and of course everybody's off on Thanksgiving. So I am so mad. I am going irate, right, in my head. Why am I doing this? They didn't care about me during the plane crash. They don't care about, all they want now is me to get the sale in. That's all they want. So I picked up my phone and threw it across this room, and it shattered the phone. I said, this is it. I'm done. So I went in at Thanksgiving dinner. I told my wife, I'm done. And a month later, I turned in my notice, and now I get the opportunity now to speak, right? I speak all over the world now, as you know. I have, books. I'm writing my 4th book right now that's coming out next January. I have my magazine that I do so I can get the message out to people. So my goal is to teach what I've been able to learn, not only from this experience, but more importantly from my mentors, to the next generation. Because one thing I've learned over the last several years is this: I've got a pretty good story, but when I talk to the youth, I'm talking millennials and Gen Zers, right, the younger people, they're extremely smart people. They're probably smarter than most of us. But one thing they don't have that I have is wisdom. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because to have wisdom, you have to have time. Mm-hmm. You got to put that time in, and you have to have mentors that teach you, right? So this is my mission, to teach the
next generation. And you have
to
have made mistakes too.
Exactly right. And I mean, my 2 daughters are millennials. 2 of my other kids are Gen Zers, right? And they're very intelligent kids, but they don't have that experience. So this is what I do now. This is one of the reasons I speak and write books and do the magazine. I want to teach this to 1 million people in the next 10 years. So this is why I do what I do.
So did you have all that lined up when you left the company, or is this something
I did not.
involved?
I did not. I'll tell you exactly what happened. It happened when I was in Los Angeles, actually. I was invited to be on Ellen and Bonnie Hunt and Dr. Phil, and I was doing all these shows. And at that point in time, I was a head of security for a guy by the name of Tony Robbins. Okay. And so I traveled with Tony around the world. I had a great mentor. I mean, he was my second mentor. I got a doctoral, right, for free, being around him, right? Mm-hmm. So, he's the only one that called me that night of the plane crash. Like I mentioned, my company didn't call. He did. Really? I tell people, he's got resources, right? He knows how to find people. He's got resources, right? Mm-hmm. He can find people. And at the end of that call, and actually, if you go out on YouTube and look at Tony Robbins praises Dave Sanderson, you can see this when he talks about our conversation that night. But at the end of that conversation, call me when you get to Los Angeles, because he was in Palm Springs. Mm-hmm. So I get to LA, and I call it. We have a 3-hour conversation.
Wow. And
he's coaching me on how to exit out, what do I need to do, what I got to think about, all these things, right? So I'm laying the game plan together, right? I'm putting the game plan together. But I was in Chicago with him about 2.5 years later. And he asked me, said, are you still working for that company? I said, yeah. He goes, it's time for you to fly. It's time for you to do what you need to do. Get out. Hey, and by the way, I'm going to find another head of security. So did I do something wrong? He goes, no, it's your time to fly. Step up and do it, right? You got it.
He's kicking you out of the nest.
Kicking you out of the nest, right? And that's when I made the decision, you know what, I can do this, right? I'm not in it alone. I can do this. And so being an entrepreneur, as you know, there's a lot of variables, right? Because one thing I can do really well is drive revenue. I'm a sales guy. I can drive revenue. Mm-hmm. One thing I'm really bad at is administration, payables and receivables. So you have to figure these things out, though, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I've done. And fortunately, I've got a great team. And you met Kelly from my team already, and I'm very blessed to have a great team around me. So yeah, this is why I do what I do, and I'm very blessed to be able to do it and meet people like yourselves and some of the groups that you and I have spoken with. Right, we're all here to support each other and help get our messages out to the next generation so they have a shot. to win.
And how have you been able to do life, marriage, and business? Is there
Well, it's actually, one of the great things about this is now I don't have to travel unless I want to travel.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? When I was there, I was being told, with the example of this, as I mentioned, when I got back the next day, my company didn't call me, so I didn't know they knew I'd been in a plane crash. So I went by the office. I was in my sweats they gave me because I had no clothes. And I just went in and I said, I just want to let you know I survived. That's all I said. And the first thing my manager looked at me and said is, "You going to Michigan next week, right?"
What? No.
First thing he said. My 2 kids were standing there staring at me like, "What are you going to do, Dad?" I said, I'll go to Michigan next week. And that's the moment I knew. All he cared about was the bottom line.
Wow.
I knew I had to get out. Now, I could have escalated it, right? And I knew I could have handled it, right? But what happened was, as part of my story now, is that actually was a better decision, because what happened was this. Yeah, I went to Michigan the next week. Michigan's cold in the winter. I don't know if you know that or not. Very cold. And, 2009 is a recession going on in the country. So our company would put us all on cheap flights, right?
So you had to fly. Wait, stop a second. So you had to fly to get to Michigan.
I had to fly, yep. I'm flying
like
to
the
Grand
next
Rapids,
week,
Michigan.
you had to
Grand
get on
Rapids.
another plane.
Right. Get another plane, go to Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was a puddle jumper. And they put me on Delta. Now, there's nothing wrong with Delta. I love Delta. I've spoken to Delta. I love Delta. And I was a rock star on U.S. Airways. I could have got anything. I'm in the last row on this little puddle jumper. And I start melting down a little bit. I'm taking off, it's shaking, right? And I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on. So I'm like, and the flight attendant noticed me. And she said, "Are you all right?" I'm like, I'll be all right. And she goes, "Were you that guy on that plane?" I'm like, "What?" She goes, "I saw you on interview." So she goes back and tells the captain. The captain now is walking back. Now when the captain's in the in the cabin, you don't know what's going on, right?
Yeah, right.
He comes back and sits down, and we have a little one-on-one. And he sort of calms me down and explains some things to me, right? And hears me a little bit about my story. And it calmed me down to the point where, it gave me certainty that I was going to be all right. And I tell people, that's a great story about Delta and their customer service, but it also, you have to get back on the plane. You have to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
And that's why I went back to the Hudson River a couple years ago to swim with seals. Because I want to show people how you face your fears. And I want to do it in a big public way. And that's why I went back and swam with the SEALs, raise money for them. That was my mission.
Okay.
But I also want to show people how you get back in and you do it.
So you're talking about the Navy SEALs, right? You're not talking about the mammal. Okay.
No, I swam with the Navy SEALs the last 2 years. This year, I'm swimming in San Diego with Special Operations, SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers, and Raiders in Coronado Bay to raise money, but also show people, hey, at 62 years old, you can do anything.
Yeah.
You can do anything, right?
Wow.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
amazing.
I just thought that was so great that the captain came back before they took off and just
Calm things down.
calmed you down. He cared that much
That's right.
to come back, to
right.
take the time and talk with you and just tell you you're going to be okay, share his experience, and just to encourage you and support you in whatever way he
could have kicked me off the plane. He could have said, I don't need to deal with this right now, right? He could have done that, right? But he had compassion and empathy. And the flight attendant recognized me, right? Which was really nice that someone recognized me for what happened the previous week. 6 days or 7 days earlier, right?
Yeah, obviously you got PTSD.
Well, and that's great leadership, that a leader would just you know what, let me give him a couple minutes and see what I can do to help him. And
that's right.
Get him back on the horse again. And because you had done so much for the people that you helped get off the plane, so he's just giving back. I just think that's
right.
Wonderful.
And I think that's part of the story I tell now, because I want people to understand, not about Delta, how nice and good they are, but if you have empathy for people, right? Part of being leadership is giving empathy, understanding that person's situation, so you can help them.
Because like you said earlier, you never know the other person's story.
Nope, the backstory. And that's why I tell people why I love Marvel movies. Is because in Marvel movies, they always give you the backstory, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You understand how Iron Man became Iron Man, Captain America became Captain America. Once you understand the backstory and the mindset, Now you know how you can deal with people, right?
Right, exactly.
But most people don't take the time to do that.
Right.
They just want to go at it, and that's one of the biggest problems in sales right now. They just think they need to get the sale instead of understanding what's that person going through, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I was in a sales situation several months ago, and it was pretty rough, right? I've been doing it for 2 years, and I took this gentleman to lunch, and he told me, he said, you know what? He said, I want to tell you something, because he knows my story. He said, my daughter was in that shooting. I said, what shooting? He goes, remember the shooting in the Dallas, in the mall? She was in that store. And he's getting ready to move, and her whole life was disrupted. And we were talking about disruption in life, right, and how to deal with it, because one of my talks is about post-traumatic growth. How do you grow out of these? And it was so nice to have someone tell me their story that, you understand now what he's going through and his family's going through, and now I know how I can help him, right? Mm-hmm. I can help him by helping his daughter, right?
Yeah, that's good. And so let's close this up by talking a little bit about your book coming out, Turmoil to Triumph. So talk to us a little bit about what that's about.
That book's out. My next book we're getting ready for. That book's out right there. I'll bring you a copy. Okay. When I see you, you'll have a copy, okay? I'll make sure you had a copy.
Oh, thank you.
But no, this book is actually the second part of I decided to put a trilogy together. I love Star Wars, and I love trilogies. So, what happened is I did Moments Matter, and that's about the experience of that day and the mindset of how to go through something like that. But I said, I want to really tell the story how I got to that point. How do you get that mindset? So this is what the book's about. And a long story short is in 1984 I had my first mentor. He came into my life. He was a good old boy from North Carolina. I found out he owned 80 movie theaters and restaurants in North and South Carolina. He was a multimillionaire. But for 13 years, he mentored me and took me under his wing. He was teaching me these lessons, right? Teaching me these lessons when I was a young, upcoming guy. Fast forward to 1997. My mother passes away. And my father was so distraught, my sister and I basically had to put him in the grave, put her in the grave, because he couldn't deal with it. He just couldn't deal with it. So I come back, and I'm trying to work and do all this, and my mind is 15 different directions. He calls me to come to his office. He said, I want to share a couple things with you. Now, he's 90 years old at this point, okay, in 1997. He comes to his office. He said, the first thing I want to share with you is I got lung cancer. Now, he smoked unfiltered Camel since the 20s. So, it is what it is, right? Yeah. But then he went over to his desk and pulled out these notes. And he came and put these notes on my lap. I said, what are these? He goes, this is what I wrote down in 1929. When I was meeting with my mentor, this is what I've been teaching. This is a success model that I've worked on. I want to give it to you, but you have to promise me one thing. I said, what? He goes, don't let it die with you. He passes away in September of that year, and 4 months later, I become the assistant head of security for Tony. So another mentor comes in your life. But what happened was this: I was writing my book, Moments Matter, and if you look right behind me, there's this credenza. I opened this credenza up because I had a bunch of notes I was working on for Moments Matter, and I found these notes. I had done nothing with them for 20 years. Nothing. Okay. And I'm like, I can't believe this, right? I'm an idiot. And though, more importantly, I didn't live up to my word. My dad said, your word's your bond, right? Yeah. So I said, I've got to do something with it. Now it's my mission to teach this. Like I told him I would. That's what this book's about. These are about the 12 primary things he taught me about how the mindset of success, going back from 1920s, right? And how he did it, right? And how he imparted it to me. I tell the story about how he did it and how he departed to me and in this book, and I'll tell you how I used each one of these in my life. Wow. And these were the moments, right, that helped me that day. That's what this is about. The next book's about what happened after. So, yep.
Oh, I can't wait to read
it. All right, that's awesome. Yep. Well, Dave, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, we could go on forever, I'm sure, but we're gonna have some time this weekend, so
I know, I'm all excited.
We'll hit the record button again. But thanks so much for. Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks so much for being on. So, as you're listening, obviously it's impacted you because you're still listening. So please share this to another entrepreneur that can use this. There's so many life lessons here, life and business and relationship lessons, because we don't want you just to do business and succeed there financially. I mean, there's more to life than that, and we don't want you to wait and have regrets.
Yes.
Right? So please share this
and subscribe to our podcast.
Yeah. So until next week, we'll have another great show, and God bless. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.